Welcome to episode 181 of Trek Live. Sorry for the delay. A very important piece of the stream was missing. It's now been found, and we're ready to go. So, that being said, how you doing this morning, Bill?
Doing great. Looking forward to what we're doing today, and happy to be talking Star Trek as always.
Yes. Before we jump into today's topic, Bill, how's your rewatch going?
It's going slowly. I've only watched two since I think last weekend.
Okay.
I watched Scientific Method from Voyager,
yeah.
which I like more each time. I did not care for it when I was younger. Don't know why.
Okay.
Just was never like a favorite, but it has grown on me, and I've found that seems to be the case across the board. I feel like whenever that episode gets mentioned, there's a lot of people out there who seem to really dig it. It's the one with the aliens on the ship, kind of experimenting on the crew and pushing them to their limits, and disrupting their sleep and pushing their like putting them in as like extreme a negative bad mood as possible. The drilling Janeway's head.
Yeah, that headgear is just
equipment.
Nightmare fuel for sure. That's one of those few episodes where I think could fall under like a Halloween type of episode.
Yeah,
I think it's perfect this week because it was Friday the 13th.
True.
So,
and I watched it on Friday the 13th.
Nice.
So
perfect.
It lined up exactly. Yeah, it's one of those, and I think maybe the older I get, and I think we all have been there. We've had days where you're just like
big time
not feeling it, and it's like nothing goes right. You're like every little thing is annoying and irritating and infuriating. Now, when you have that episode in your head, you're like, is there somebody
performing
with me?
Yeah.
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 So that was enjoyable. I really liked it this time around. And then I watched Sacrifice of Angels, which is obviously a really key piece of Deep Space Nine and wraps up that beginning arc of season 6 really well. Great action, great battle sequence, and some really key just culmination of multiple storylines. It puts a lot of characters in the important situations. I think I always kind of think about Quark kind of saving the day and breaking them out of the holding cell, having like a little moment of not comfortable heroism. Like, it's not his comfort zone. It's not something that he's like naturally prepared to do, but he does it, and I think that's a big moment for his character. I think I think you talked about it when you watched it, when Odo turns back and the Bajoran phasers are going off in the cargo bay, and he comes to their rescue.
It's a great moment.
That's a great moment. So that's a obvious classic, and what hasn't been said about that. So just 2 episodes so far, maybe a couple more to go today. I have Year of Hell like right on the horizon, and you were cordially invited in between parts 1 and 2. So that may happen today. It might not. It might be next weekend. I think it's been a busy weekend for me.
Nice.
Personal stuff. But what about you?
I believe I've watched 2 or 3 episodes since we last talked. Let's see here. Get to my list. I think the last time we talked, I had only watched Image in the Sand, if I was correct. If that's correct. So I watched Shadows and Symbols, After Image, and then Take Me Out to the Holosuite.
What's your favorite of the 3?
Take Me Out to the Holosuite is definitely my favorite. It's I really like it. It's a nice break. I think, and I think the crew does need it a little bit at this point for sure. But and maybe this is a longer conversation for a bigger day. But I'm still not completely sold on Ezri Dax and really introducing her so early in the show. So, but I think there actually is some good stuff in After Image. Some of the delivery and story choices do feel a little bit clunky at times, but and I think I will save my thoughts for maybe another time, another day. But Yeah, I think it's a okay run of episodes. It's definitely, those aren't definitely my favorite episodes, except maybe Take Me Out to the Holosuite was just such a fun, just fun time. So yeah, it was great.
I remember liking Shadows and Symbols a decent amount. I think the Kira storyline in Command and having to run a blockade of the Romulan ships who are kind of pushing the boundaries a little too much. I enjoy that. I like seeing Kira having to, be legitimately in command and have to make independent choices.
Yeah.
And I also am always really fascinated, and maybe this is another bigger story, maybe something else to talk about with wrapping up Deep Space Nine as we get a little closer. There's a whole thing with this, but I've always really liked the way that kind of calls back to Shadows and Symbols, calls back to the Far Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, the false vision. Yeah, the prophet says you passed the false vision. And I was like, because during you're like, oh, is this real? Is this like, was that real? And then we come to find out that was well, I guess we don't really know for sure, but we knew it was a false vision. That's to the extent we know. But yeah, I love that callback as well. You're right. That does do some cool stuff. And there's some... I'm kicking myself. I was sending messages to Bill as I was watching that. We missed some good uniforms in that episode. So there's some desert issue, like standard issue desert stuff in there that's kind of interesting and different. So
different. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, we kind of missed the boat on that one, I think. Had we done that show this week or next week, that would have featured prominently, because So I think we should get into it real quick, though. Cyber Honey mentioned right off the top her rewatch. She watched season 5 of TNG, season 4 of Enterprise, season 2 of Voyager, mixing and matching, all that stuff. It's impressive. I admire the ability to bounce around and watch things at once. Love it. Ozzy Trekkie's in the room. I know he's watching Enterprise as he's sharing in the Discord server, Enterprise season 1.
Nice.
A lot of good stuff there. Jimmy 77's in the room. Welcome, as always. I think we should get right into it. So
let's do
this week this is our third foray into the no prep idea. This is kind of, just to give a little bit of background for those who haven't been here for this before. We use Memory Alpha's random article generator on when we have our Trek After Dark hangouts on the Discord server. And I think this is pretty commonly done when you have a pack of fans together. If you need to figure out something to watch, the random article generator is really useful to just give you something completely random. And so we kind of took that idea and decided to occasionally do an episode of Trek Live where we use that same idea to give us a topic to talk about without any prep involved. No, hatching an idea. We just share a screen, run the random article generator on Memory Alpha, and whatever it gives us, directly or indirectly, it might give us an episode or a character, in which case that's what we have. It might give us like a really obscure prop or a sub character or an extra, and we kind of just have to find something, if it's possible, to find something relatively coherent out of that random roll of the dice. So we're gonna do that today. We've done it a couple of times. Like I said, last time we did it, we rolled and got the Katati, I think, if I remember correctly, which is the alien species in Day of Honor. So we ended up talking about Day of Honor, and that was a fun little conversation. I think the first time we got a musical instrument of some kind, maybe the Vulcan lute or something.
Yeah,
and
something
we ended up
like
talking
that.
About music in Star Trek.
Did we do an author as well? I feel like, I don't know. Maybe it was.
This might be our fourth one.
This might be our fourth.
We got the Reeves Stevenses at one point, and we ended up talking about Enterprise season 4 because they were writers in season 4 of Enterprise. So they've written novels, but neither one of us are. I know Ozzy Trekkie in the room is a huge literary Star Trek universe fan, and would have been great to have for a conversation on that. But with just Dan and I, we ended up doing Enterprise season 4 because that's where we were comfortable conversing. So yeah, I think you're right, Dan. I think this is our fourth. We try to do it maybe twice a year. Every 6 months or so. So we're gonna do that now. Are you okay with?
Memory, at least the website I'm on, has updated their layout a little bit, and I cannot find the random generator. So just give us a second to find that. If they took that feature away,
Memory Alpha. No, it's there. I mean, I'm looking at it on mobile, and under Explore, there's a random page button, at least on mobile. You can see how little prep we did. We didn't even check Memory Alpha. See if they haven't touched their. We got to it too. Memory Alpha.
Under Explorer, I just only get. Oh man, this is.
All right. Well, I have it. If you want, I can do it here, and then I can just.
Yeah, send me the link or something, so I can maybe throw it up on the screen for folks in the room so they can see what we're talking about today.
Yep.
That's funny.
So I'm gonna push on the Memory Alpha website, which is really clunky here. Apologies for the shoddy
whatever gets
presentation. Whatever. Yeah. I am hitting random page now. And okay, we have a page for a Rigelian parrot, and it's referencing a deleted scene from the Star Trek Enterprise episode E Squared from season 3.
Okay.
So, and this is a creature that Dr. Phlox has in his sickbay. So we have a couple different avenues we could take here with E Squared as an episode, and Dr. Phlox as a character, and his menagerie in sickbay. How much do you remember E Squared? Since you haven't watched Enterprise for a while.
Not at all, really.
Not at all.
Not
okay.
Much recollection of that.
Well, then let's. I think Dr. Phlox might be the way to go.
Okay.
Because I think it fits one of the hallmarks of, I think, Dr. Phlox as a character, and what he sort of brings to the table from a unique standpoint is that menagerie in his sickbay, that he relies on creatures and, sort of like a holistic, natural form of medicine of the future in his practice. So with that being such a kind of foundational piece to give him a unique flavor as Star Trek Doctor, I think it's a good jumping off point for a Dr. Phlox conversation.
Yeah, and it's he feels like just his whole sickbay in general just feels so different than what we've seen before. Like he's such a departure from all the other more like high tech, like hypospray things like that. So his the creatures in there, I think, definitely fit his kind of persona as a doctor. But yeah, it's just another interesting kind of difference, I guess, that Enterprise has. Is Phlox is such a different character than we kind of a different Doctor than we had before, for sure.
And I remember when Enterprise was being rolled out as a new thing before we ever saw Broken Bow, like pre-pilot, and they were kind of putting out very basic character outlines for each of the main cast, and that was one of the things that they really highlighted with Dr. Phlox, that he was going to have this, that this was going to be, he wasn't going to be a super high-tech doctor. And I think they were very conscious of the fact that characters like the Doctor and Voyager and Bashir and Crusher lean very heavily into high-tech solutions and futuristic medicine and hyposprays and tricorders, and Dr. Phlox was going to be a very different kind of doctor. So I think you're right that from the very beginning, that was something that they wanted to accomplish with that character, and I think they did. I think in some of the more memorable episodes of Enterprise, for me, some of my favorite episodes like Similitude, without that piece of the Doctor's character, without that idea being there from the beginning, that episode doesn't work. I mean, how do you the whole thing kind of spawns from Phlox as this thing that he doesn't necessarily know exactly how he's going to use, but he knows it has some practice or some practical benefit that might come useful someday, and it leads to this
just like
situation.
Yeah, just like a Regillian parrot. It's just Phlox's stockroom is so just filled with stuff that is obviously some probably medicine based, some not. Just in my headcanon, that's just such an asset to the ship. And to the crew for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think right away in Broken Bow, if I remember correctly, Archer gets hit with like phaser blast from the Suliban at one point, and he's using like leeches to suck out the plasma or whatever is left behind by the phaser blast. And like early in Enterprise, I think there's a good bit of that, if I remember correctly. That they use, but he will use things that the crew is not always comfortable with, not the kind of medicine that you would envision. And I like that sort of retro, unexpected approach. You know, Star Trek, like I said, is, you know, it's one of the things that I think they wanted to. They obviously wanted Enterprise to feel more like closer to us than Voyager, for example, and giving it some of these more grounded, low tech, personality traits was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Cyber Honey mentions the night in sick bay. I think that's an episode that leans pretty heavily into the sick bay that Phlox keeps. You know, that this is a very active place with creatures like a Rigelian parrot, right? You know, that's the one episode that kind of gives us a window into what goes on in there beyond just the popping in to get your hangnail trimmed or your broken bone, set, or whatever's bringing you into sickbay that day. You get a sense of, you know, what goes on in there in the middle of the night and through the day when there's not a crisis going on.
Yeah. And in Enterprise, it's just an animal, like animals on the ship are such more like prevalent idea. Like we've got all of Phlox's stuff. Like it's not just the parrot, obviously, but in the Night in Sick Bay, it's like
Porthos.
Oh, that's true, Porthos, obviously, and it's just it's kind of peek behind the curtain into that kind of his whole. I guess one good thing that I do like about A Night in Sick Bay is that kind of aspect, but it's at least in that episode I feel like it's just like a kind of a wild jungle and very unpredictable, and so it's
A Night in Sick Bay is definitely one of those episodes that I know I've said this before, but very divisive. There are people out there who love it and really kind of like we talked about, and it'll come out hopefully soonish. On Course Heading, we had a conversation about this first episode of Lower Decks, and we talked about how humor is obviously subjective, like all, entertainment is subjective. But A Night in Sick Bay is definitely a prime example of your mileage may vary, and there are people out there who love it, people who are not into it at all. I think you and I are more on the side of it's not a favorite, but the mixed feelings I have about it, on the positive end of my experience with The Night in Sick Bay is I do appreciate what it does for Phlox on this level, how it gives us a window into, because he's not one of in Enterprise, as we've talked about before, the structure of that show really does shine the brightest spotlight on Archer, T'Pol, and Trip. I feel like we get the
big
most.
Three.
We have the most insight into their experience, their day to day. What they're thinking, what they're experiencing. They're clearly the focus of the show, and the rest of the cast, I think, is maybe a little bit of a step back in terms of just emphasis. And Phlox is a really interesting character, and by the nature of him not being human, he's an alien. He's a new alien. He's not an alien species that we've ever met before. He's not somebody.
Yeah.
It's all new. Every time we see him, every time he says anything about his background and what his perspective is, it's a new thing in Star Trek. So there's obviously I think a great interest in him from the audience's standpoint, because it's fresh and exciting and different. And A Night in Sickbay puts him into the spotlight in a lot of different ways. So I give it credit for that. And what we're finding ourselves talking about here today with the animals and the retro brand of medicine and his, the way he keeps the sick bay is on full display in that episode.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's I don't want to write Dr. Phlox off as just like more like a comedic relief. Like, he's got some dynamic stuff. He's not just the comic relief in the episode or in moments in the show. Like, he's a reflection on humanity and the differences that aliens can be. Like, it just I think that's just a great presence on the ship, because again, at least the Federation's, it's not even this Starfleet ship is so new to the region. It's nice to have this pillar of just outside worldness, I guess, in your sickbay, which is kind of a cool idea just in itself.
Yeah, Ozzy Trekkie is mentioned that he says, from Broken Bow, Phlox tells the crew to expand their provincial views on what medications can be used. For example, animal droppings and osmotic eels, Rigelian bloodworms, cyber honey. I think right from the beginning, and what you're kind of saying right there, Dan, because of who T'Pol is and what her perspective is, she's not really situated to teach our human characters about like what a bit more closed off. She's more reserved, and at least early on, especially, she's not really inclined to be a hand-holding, lesson-teaching, guidance counselor, and the crew needs that because this is the first crew. I feel like Phlox is the one right from the beginning, and I think these kinds of, like Ozzy Trekkie's talking about, like kind of putting the crew in a position to have to challenge their preconceptions and be open to wacky, crazy things, like I'm going to put a needle on your leg to suck the plasma out or whatever. Like that is needed by the crew. Like, they need to be open to, there's going to be crazy stuff out there and a lot of diversity and a lot of he's constantly challenging them to be open-minded and to be optimistic and to trust and to be accepting of the weirdness that you're going to encounter. And his presence on the ship in dull moments and sitting in the mess hall having dinner, like just in random encounters with him, is constantly putting the crew in a position to have to do that. So I think his presence on the crew and his piece of the ensemble is really critical, because he's the one who does that, and the crew needs it more than any other crew to be constantly reminded of that. And I feel like it's kind of like he's kind of putting the building blocks in place for that infinite diversity and infinite combination philosophy that drives the future crews. Like that you have to be able to do that. You can't just be a tunnel vision. Blinders, this is how we do things. Human. Yeah. What I expect. That's not the Starfleet way that we come to expect from future crews. And I think Phlox is the one who might drill that into the first crew's head, and hopefully that first crew will pass that on to, the future Starfleet officers. And I think, whether completely intentional or not, I think that's what I take away from the Phlox character, and might be his best asset from my perspective.
I always think of the scene with Phlox and T'Pol in the mess hall, and he just like cuts down her kind of her walls and uses her own theology against her. I think that's such a strong kind of aspect of, and it's not just towards T'Pol, like you said, Bill. He's just he does that for everyone, and kind of sets the standard, I guess, and helps them realize that. So
you're right, though, that T'Pol needs it probably more than humans even do. She's yes. rigid and specific in the way she's going to do things and the way she sees things. and her preconceptions about, you know, how things work, and all that stuff is as ingrained in T'Pol as it is in the humans.
Yeah.
I think more so. So yeah, you're right. I mean, he does as much work on her as he does on Archer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But you mentioned that. Are there other things, just kind of talking about Phlox more broadly, are there other moments, scenes, things that he's done that kind of stand out when you think about him? What comes to mind when you think of Phlox as?
Yeah, just this kind of wacky, quirky, just kind of, I know that I tend to use colors. Like, the crew to me seems a lot about black and white and things like that. But I think he plays in the gray a little bit. I think he's got some, I don't know, just some interesting moments throughout the show. I think there's some great moments that are not a Phlox episode, but he just kind of nails every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think but he's also a very dynamic character, and I think he's very interesting, and just because he's not the typical, at least at times, he's not the typical comic relief. He does have some dramatic moments too, and some very dramatic episodes that are, I think, now very divisive in some of these times. But yeah, got good stuff. Yeah,
he's got good stuff throughout. Like you said, I think it's important with him, like a lot of these characters, some of my favorite moments with Phlox come in episodes that are not like a Phlox episode. I think of there's Damage towards the end of season 3. In the middle of that, Enterprise beat up to all heck by this Indy. That's the episode where Archer makes his kind of in a pale moonlight decision and steps over a line, as he says. And there's a really, really good scene in Archer's like broken quarters with Phlox dropping off Porthos, and Archer basically tells Phlox that he's about to step over a line and he's going to do something that is painful and he knows is wrong, like by the most basic kind of moral code. It's against what he would ordinarily, find acceptable. But he's going to do it because he has to, and they have a really good exchange, and it's very quiet and muted. And you think, when I on the most basic level, when you think of Phlox, you kind of think of kind of loud and eccentric and more extreme character. But he's got, like you said, these quieter moments, these dramatic moments, like in Damage, that I think because of his wide spectrum of abilities in terms of like the way that character is presented, and sometimes going so broad and loud, when he goes quiet like that, it really has some punch. And I think Damage might be my favorite bit in that. I think he's really good in Similitude too. I think he's a quiet, under the radar, dramatic MVP of that episode. I think his scenes really carry a lot of weight and punch, and he bears a lot of the responsibility for what's happening there and feels it. And I think John Billingsley's performance in a lot of those scenes is top of the line Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
I like the day-to-day stuff in Doctor's Orders. I know we kind of talked about kind of Halloween-y type episodes, and there's a similar episode in Voyager. But
definitely.
That's another one that at least I remember. I like just seeing his day-to-day kind of routine. Anytime we get to see day-to-day stuff in Star Trek, I think it's fun.
Yeah, we talked about that a good bit too. I couldn't agree with that more. I like seeing the more casual side of life on a starship or on a space station, and that's definitely an episode where he's kind of forced to go through a monotonous daily routine, and because of his nature and his upbringing as a member of a species that's very, comes from a very overpopulated planet, big families, overlapping family dynamics that are complicated and messy, and he's got all this in him. So, being alone and dealing with isolation and solitude is a challenge for him, and I think that puts him into some interesting psychological positions as well. Ozzy Trek, he mentions Boxola. That's the one with the big webbed, nasty-looking creature.
That has some day-to-day in it too, though. Sorry, real quick.
That has some, yeah.
It's the Olympics were just happening, so that we get to see Archer watching water polo. That's cool. So, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, he mentions in that episode, Phlox stops Reed from experimenting on a piece of the life form they took from the cargo bay, so it's a standard going forward. Absolutely, yeah. That's another example of I think Phlox low key kind of is the guy who kind of establishes some of these practices and the way that Starfleet officers are going to handle a lot of situations, and the way that it's mission critical to be open-minded and to treat all living creatures with kind of a degree of respect, regardless of how they appear or what they're going to be, and how they present themselves. I think Phlox kind of constantly challenges them to keep those things alive, and that becomes such a hallmark of. And he
feels such open-minded and optimistic, and just his culture is really enlightened, I guess, and I think just again, I just do love that about
him. Agreed, absolutely. Jimmy 77 says Star Trek Enterprise should have had all 7 seasons. I think we agree. I think that's a long-standing point of pain and suffering, at least for me.
Yeah.
So I echo that sentiment completely.
Yeah. So the deleted scene, is that from that's from the Blu-ray stuff?
Yes, okay. Correct. Yeah, there are deleted scenes on the Star Trek Enterprise Blu-rays. So for anybody out there who hasn't taken the leap into physical media with Trek, the TNG and Enterprise Blu-rays, and even the new stuff, the Discovery Blu-rays have a lot of deleted scenes as well. So yeah, that's the kind of wacky thing with Memory Alpha random article generator. You can get obviously everything
from deleted scenes.
A deleted scene that many people have probably never seen. To you can just roll and get Spock. Something as like, generic and big as that.
As a
parrot from a deleted scene of a random 3rd season episode of Enterprise.
Yeah.
But I think we did what we do with this. It's not a matter of like you got to talk about specifically what you roll. It's finding, a lane into an interesting conversation. It's going to lead to an episode or a character or a storyline. No matter what you roll with the random article generator. So it.
Yeah, so
I'm still a proponent for this.
Yeah, just to reiterate with Trek After Dark stuff. So this, if we were to draw this article, the first episode mentioned would be E Squared. So that would make the list of the options that we would watch that night. So or day or whenever we're doing it. But always a fun time doing this. Never know what you're gonna get, which I think is fun.
Indeed, definitely big proponents for that, and always look forward to doing that. And the decision on what to watch is always one of the more, I think, interesting experiences with the Trek After Dark evenings. So we usually have to do like a best of 3, kind of a deal. So it's usually still like a degree of not debate, but weighing our options, and they're always fun conversations.
So this parrot could have made it. Oh wait, no. Is it saying that it's still alive? Is it saying that it's 117 years old, or is it saying that it's still alive 117 years later?
I think it's still alive. I think it's 117 years old when Phlox talks about it in the deleted scene, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
I think.
I'm just saying. I wasn't sure if it was going to live for another 117 years.
Oh, no, it says which was still alive 117 years later.
Okay, so
I have to watch. I probably
so is it on with the Doctor on Enterprise with Kirk and McCoy? Who knows?
Who knows? He could be around for who the heck knows how long.
Yeah. My mind goes to what does Phlox name all his I don't even know what you would call his all of the animals in there, but
bat. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. His bat, I don't think has a name. He doesn't call it by name. He always says my Pyrithian bat.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a good question though. You would think he does seem like the kind of guy who would name
his
pets, because he seems to have some emotional connection to them. He talks to them.
Yeah.
Like he's which I think is cool too. Like knowing him, in Dear Doctor, they play a lot on, in his letters to Dr. Lucas, he talks about the crew not always like being the most comfortable around him. He eats alone sometimes because he's different, and he's aware of these things, and knowing what his background is, with coming from very, populated families, very populated planet, always having people around. His comfort zone is to be chatty Cathy and to have these interactions all the time. So people aren't coming to hang out with him in sickbay. He's going to talk to his animals, and I think that all logically adds up for
makes sense
choices that he makes. And I mean, he's gonna that's what he needs to kind of stay sane, I'm sure. And it's not going to be the crew; it's going to be the bat and the Brigelian parrot.
Yeah, and maybe that's why the collection is so extensive, is because he knew taking this assignment, he knew that there was going to be some challenges, and he was going to need that kind of outlet. Whereas I think this is pre-holodeck, I believe, so they didn't have that kind of technology to be able to use that as an outlet and have interactions, because effects of space travel or deep space travel, so it makes sense.
Yeah, you have to imagine.
Yeah,
like a home on Denovula would probably be a pretty crowded place with all these husbands and wives and kids running around. Like, it's pretty active and packed places. And how's he populate a sick bay? Pretty active and hectic, and like that's it all adds up. I think Phlox is a really well conceived character in Enterprise. I think a lot of the background and the building blocks are well established, and he's built on a good foundation. And as they're talking about in the chat, we missed out on like 78 episodes of Enterprise with the early cutoff in 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
Who knows what more could have been done with building that character out with all that extra time.
Yeah.
But even with what they had with the 98 episodes, which is still a lot more than a lot of TV shows ever get, the 4 seasons, he gets a good bit to do, and I think we get to know him pretty well over those 4 seasons.
Yeah.
I think that'll do it. I think we accomplished what we set out to accomplish.
Yes.
We had a good conversation about Dr. Phlox and his
assortment
specifically his his sick bay environment, his animals, and pets / companions / medical instruments.
Yes.
All that good stuff. I think that'll do it. Stay tuned. If you keep an eye on our Trek Live feeds, you'll hopefully pretty soon here see an episode of Core Setting land, which is our quick reaction to episode 1 of season 2 of Lower Decks. You'll be seeing that for the foreseeable future. We're gonna pre-record quick raw reactions and post them during the week to record and put ourselves on the record to talk about the new stuff. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll be back for more Trek Live next week, I believe, right?
Yeah, we'll be back next week. Talking about we're gonna do another writer's room, I believe, which should be a good time, so definitely stay tuned for that. Bring your writer's caps. We're gonna be put together some interesting stuff, so it should be a fun time as always. And then also Core Setting next weekend as well. So the discussion does not stop here. Bill mentioned it, probably Twitter and Discord are probably the best place to keep the conversation going. Discord is fantastic right now, very active server right now, so it's really good. So definitely check that out. Thanks everybody. Thank you everyone in chat. We loved having your guys' input throughout the show today. It really helped. And if you're watching this after the fact or listening to it after the fact, thank you as well. But I think the best way is to help us through chat and guide the conversation. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks everybody.